I'll have to apologize here because I'm used to giving this climate lecture in an hour with lots of view graphs and charts. A scientist doesn't know what to do without PowerPoint. So now I'm going to use a little piece of paper here. And remember, all of us scientists are extreme introverts that just sort of come out of the closet of extreme need. So that's why I'm here. This is extreme need. So all I can do is give you the bottom line for the most authoritative sources we have out there today. So what is that? It's the IPCC. It's the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. That sounds like a government agency. It's not. It's something the UN started in 1990 as climate change became more obvious to the scientists. And we needed something other than the chaos you hear today on the internet of everybody's different opinion. You can support any opinion you want with Google. So how do we understand what really is going on? So they started an activity that involves roughly thousands of scientists from every field of economics and climate change relevant to this problem. And they produce 3,000-page reports every 5 or 6 years that summarize everything we know from the past and last 5 years of science research of thousands of journal articles, all peer-reviewed, by the best we have in the science community. You should take this as the minimum possible change, because scientists, as a rule, are very conservative animals who like to caveat the hell out of everything. So when we tell you something in the IPCC, if anything, it has been dumbed down, because the policymakers who meet with us at the very end for that last 20-page summary you can find on the web, the policymaker summary, the IPCC, mostly the policymakers argue for more uncertainty than the scientists want. They yell and scream at each other for a week, and then finally they compromise somewhere in the middle. So think of this as the minimum you can see. So that IPCC report is on 3 things. The science of climate change, that policymaker report came out just about a month ago. The economic impacts, potentially, of climate change, that came out just recently. And the third one, not yet out, is potential mitigation strategies. By the way, all major scientific bodies, and by this I mean National Academy of Sciences, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, which is millions of scientists, all basically agree with the IPCC. Every time the government has asked them to endorse or not endorse these conclusions, they have always endorsed the IPCC. So you should think of, instead of trying to read every little science article that comes out every day on Google or the news, just take the IPCC as the best sanity you can get, and every 5 or 6 years we update it. We're now into the 4th assessment report, and every assessment report has gotten more certain as we have slowly dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's of uncertainty. So don't believe any individual scientist, including me. All I'm going to tell you about here today is what the IPCC says, not what I say. Don't believe Dick Lenzen, don't believe any Academy of Science single scientist. Only really believe what those organizations as a whole have to say, because the system is so complex. It's chemistry, it's atmosphere, it's ocean, it's ice sheets, it's biology. No individual scientist understands that breadth, and it takes thousands to really look at the scope of it. So that's what I would recommend you do for information. You can find the IPCC by just Googling it. They have a website that has all the reports on it. And you can get anywhere from the 20-page policymaker summary to the 100-page technical report to the 1,000-page full document if you feel you are up to reading that 1,000 pages. So the internet is full right now of individuals who will tell you anything you want to know. They'll tell you global warming is a conspiracy of the scientists behind the scenes. I can tell you it's not. Scientists are like herding cats. I know I run a 100 group of scientists, and getting any 2 of them to say the same thing is extremely difficult. So the fact that the IPCC is 1,000 scientists agreeing is perhaps one of the most remarkable scientific reviews that's ever been done. So what does the latest report say? Is global warming real? Yes, we've had about 1.5 degree Fahrenheit warming since the 1800s. That's certain. And also global signals, you should remember, show up much more quickly than Virginia signals. Climate noise is much bigger at small time and space scales than it is at the biggest time and space scales. So we see the early signs of what's coming at the largest global scales first. You will not see them here in Virginia as rapidly as you see them in the global picture, and that's what the scientists are all looking at. Is it mostly caused by our use of coal, oil, and natural gas? That is now up to 90% certainty. It wasn't when we started in 1990, it is now. Most of the warming in the last 50 years has been caused by anthropogenic greenhouse gases. It's consistent with what our physics says. The amount of warming we have, if anything, is on the high end of what our current physical climate models predict. The other thing that's significant is Natural variability I just talked about of the climate system itself is significant. It was about 1990 when finally the global mean temperature change rose up definitively out of that background. It's not coincidental that that's when the IPCC process took off. It's not coincidental that's when you started hearing about global warming. The science of global warming is not new. It was first proposed in the late 1800s. It was then confirmed and predicted as to how much warming we would get in the 1960s. And to be honest, here we are 40 years later, that prediction hasn't changed much. The fundamental underlying physics of global climate change has not changed in the last 40 years. There is nothing we know in the IPCC that's going to dramatically make it change. To show you how much that has risen above natural variability, 11 of the last 12 years are the warmest and global mean that we have had on the record since 1850. Is it going to cause much larger changes in the future than we've already seen? The answer is yes. Is there still uncertainty about how fast and how big those changes are going to be? That answer is also yes. So for example, even though we know we're going to warm, there is still uncertainty about how much and how fast that warming will occur. What we can tell you is that as we look at the current physics and the uncertainties we have, and we've done this by everything from comparing to what the models predict for past glacial, interglacial periods, the 100,000-year time scale events the paleo data shows us, as well as all twiddling all the possible knobs we're not sure of to their minimum to maximum range. The answer we get back is by 2100, the globe as a whole will warm anywhere from 3 degrees Fahrenheit to as much as 8 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's still a factor of 3 uncertainty, but there's almost no way to get it under 3. The high end at 8 is actually the least well-constrained of the boundaries. There are possibilities for even more extreme sensitivity in the climate system that we can't yet rule out. Sea level, you've probably heard a lot about this. The current IPCC says anywhere from 0.5 foot to 2 foot global sea level rise by 2100. What's the uncertainty there? It could be anywhere from 1 to 10 feet, mainly because the dynamics of glacier motion is not in our current climate models. This is unfortunately exactly how most glaciers disappear, as they run faster downhill as they melt. We're working fast to try to add that physics to our models, but right now the IPCC says the uncertainty is too great to state any range of uncertainty there, so they're just sticking with the very conservative 1 to 2 foot that doesn't have any glacier motion in it. Precipitation changes, there will be more extremes of drought and floods, and regional changes as shifts occur in things moving toward the poleward regions as we warm the globe. Those are pretty certain conclusions.